where Donald Trump's former chief of staff led an effort to remove his RICO case out of the Georgia courts and then lost. A federal judge denying the bid to take that trial to federal court, but he thought his odds were better. The loss for Mr. Mark Meadows, now a defendant, means he will face trial in Georgia. It's also bad news for other Trump co-defendants who hope to take this same tack. And that's what I'm going to get into this with you right now until we bring in Michael Steele. So here's the bottom line. The judge has rejected what Meadows was claiming, that he was acting as a proper federal official for activities that are alleged in this RICO indictment, because Meadows is accused of crimes about overturning the election results in Georgia. And the judge noted the Constitution does not even provide any basis for executive branch involvement with state election and post-election procedures. Now, think about it. You don't need to be a lawyer for this one. Mark Meadows was on that infamous call, and it was, of course, a post-election call, to use the judge's words, where Meadows and Trump were together on the line pushing this Georgia official to find votes Trump didn't have.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
Mr. Secretary, I was hopeful that, in a spirit of cooperation and compromises, there's something that we can at least have a discussion to look at some of these allegations to find a path forward that's less litigious.
So what you heard there, Meadows saying he wants a discussion or a less litigious way forward on changing the election outcome, is, according to this judge, not part of his federal job. And as for what they were doing, very critically, on that call, they were with Trump campaign lawyers, and that is not federal government business. Now, Meadows admitted the lawyers on the phone call were lawyers for Trump personally or the Trump campaign, and the judge refers to that admission by Meadows because he also conceded that very difference under oath, saying, if I were working for the Trump campaign, that would not be my role as chief of staff. So there you have it. That's pretty cut and dry. Meadows wasn't doing federal business, so he can't hide behind the federal business protection that exists for other federal officials doing actual federal business. Now, Meadows took great risks refusing to testify before the January 6th committee. You may recall that. But you'll notice what I just quoted very simply was evidence that was used by the judge in this loss for Meadows, and it includes Mark Meadows' own testimony. So how did that happen? Well, it happened because Mr. Meadows folded after this indictment. He took the stand trying to explain why he should get to run right out of Georgia court. So what I'm telling you tonight is he lost that bid, but also, if you're counting, there's two losses here. He lost the long battle to avoid testifying, which shows that when his own case, his own liberty was on the line, turns out he's willing to testify after all. And then he went on to lose the federal claim, even after providing that testimony, hours of it. Those are the setbacks for Meadows. He's headed to trial in Georgia. But as a matter of fairness and precision, I also want to make sure to report for you, as we explain what's happening here, none of these setbacks determine anything legally about Mr. Meadows' innocence or potential guilt. The same judge noting in this same ruling against Meadows that, like all accused, he maintains the presumption of innocence. So you have that round of legal maneuvering and a procedural win for D.A. Willis, who has still remained one of the many things that Donald Trump is upset about. Well, I wanted to get your views on all this because, as I took care to say, Mr. Meadows is still presumed innocent. He had every right to make that motion. He gets his time in court. But boy, did the judge slap it down with a 2x4, not saying you're guilty, sir, but saying, sir, if you are post-election trying to overturn the results, while a jury will decide whether that's a crime, I could tell you today, yesterday, and tomorrow, that ain't chief of staffing. Not even in the low standards of wherever you've been. And so we turn to you as someone who's not only been in government, as I mentioned, but at RNC, you deal with officials. It seems to me that they might already know that, low bar, et cetera. And so I wanted your view, with all your experience, on that development in this case.
Well, I think it's significant because it stated very clearly, the judge did, that you're not going to play me for a sucker here. You're not going to sit there and tell me you are actively violating the Hatch Act, which is a federal law that prevents government employees from engaging in political activity of every level, whether it's making donations, whether it's participating in campaigns, advocating for a candidate, whatever, or an issue. Very clear, bright line. So the fact that Meadows likely making these phone calls from the White House, right? We talked about where the calls came from. Where was Trump when he had this call? Where was Meadows when these calls were made? Where were any of these government officials who are going to be claiming, oh, I was acting in my official capacity? Where did you make the call? Because the reality of it is, if you made the call on federal property, you're in violation of the Hatch Act, number one. And number two, you're not acting as a government official. You're acting in a campaign capacity. So if Meadows wanted to give advice on the litigiousness of this process, avoiding that litigious process, he should have been a member of the campaign, or he should have recused himself as a federal official and said, Mr. President, I'm going to go over to the campaign to deal with this issue for you, and you'll put in my deputy or someone else to run the day-to-day operations of the White House. So the judge basically said, you're not going to have it both ways. Stuff it, and the judge did.
Yeah, yeah. Then we turn to Lindsey Graham, who the grand jury saw as a potential defendant with a lot of evidence. The DA didn't go that far, didn't ultimately pursue him or some other individuals. We're just learning that from finally getting the full grand jury report, which is interesting. We always love to get the facts. Now, Lindsey Graham, you know, if he were reincarnated as like a ruler or a measuring stick, Michael, you couldn't use it because you get a different measurement every day. You know what I mean? You just, what's 12 inches, 6 inches, 18. It's sort of, yeah, it'd be like a Salvador Dali measurement.
Yeah, no, look.
For those,
Lindsey,
so I got to play you something. I'm gonna let you respond, but I got to play you something. But for those art buffs out there, we got he would be the melting clock, which doesn't always give you the exact melting wax time of day. Right. And I mentioned that because, boy, the time of day before Trump had power, Lindsey said he was a racist kook, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. Then Trump had power, he said something different. Then Trump looked to be on the ropes, January 7th, technically, because it was about 1 in the morning. We covered it. Lindsey got on the floor of the Senate, said, count me out, insurrection. Then Trump's power seemed to flow, and he came back to him. Interestingly, Friday, Michael, I say that introduction to say that on Friday, he was less into defending Donald Trump finding votes and more into explaining that he never said what Trump, the defendant, said. Take a look.
My phone call was to find out what I should be doing as a senator. I never suggested anybody set aside the election. I never said go find votes.
What do you hear when you hear Graham now saying, I never said what Trump said, go find the votes?
Can't backstroke fast enough away from what he knows is a volatile and very dangerous legal position to be in. Number one, as a U.S. Senator, you have no role here. It's ceremonial. You come up, you sit in the chamber, you cast that vote, you move on. Now, if there are questions, there's a process within the Senate to deal with that. Ask him, in any other election, did you make a phone call in 2000 Bush v. Gore election to find out what the hell was going on in Florida? Did you make that call? No, you didn't. Why? Because you had no role there. So the inquiries that he was making was on behalf of Trump. He was bringing in pressure from elsewhere. You're the senator from South Carolina. If the senators from the state of Georgia didn't make the phone call, why the hell are you making it? When do you have more clout than they do to influence the Secretary of State of their state to act or engage in a way that is contra or counterintuitive, number one, but illegal potentially? Where does that come from? So Lindsey, yeah, the ruler is all over the place, right? There's no straight line here with him. If you claim someone is a racist and then you embrace him, what does that make you? If you claim someone is an insurrectionist and you embrace him, what does that make you? So, you know, these guys want to tell America now that, you know, well, I was against Donald Trump before I was with him, but now I'm against him again. We're just not having any of it. Stop it. We don't care. You have shown us who you are, and the legal system caught up with you, and now you're going to sit there and go, well, all I did was just wanted to find out what was going on. Well, you had no role or place to do that, and the judge, again, caught you on it.